go to Boston, and he goes, that's the last words I heard him say, actually. And he said, do you want me to come with you? Oh, God.
You know, as I say, I realize I want to, you know, I just want more. This isn't it. This isn't it, you know. Fame is not the goal.
George Harrison, the quiet Beatle, had a secret list of artists he totally adored, and their songs were like magic to his soul. Even while making his own hits, certain musicians deeply touched and guided him. It wasn't just liking their music. He felt a powerful, life-changing link to their sound. These weren't just people he liked. They lit up his whole musical world. Tune in now to learn which star George admired like crazy, and the wild story of how their sound changed him. 1. Little Richard.
But let me say this about the Beatles.
All right.
I took the Beatles on this tour. They was making $50 a week a person. God bless the Beatles, and he did. I used to have to buy their steaks every day.
Way back before George Harrison was a household name, and even before his spiritual journey led him to the music of India, he was a teenager in Liverpool, England, hungry for something new and exciting. And then, like a colorful explosion, came rock and roll from America. At the very forefront of this thrilling wave was Little Richard. For young George, and for countless others of his generation, Little Richard wasn't just singing songs. He was unleashing a wild, joyful energy that changed everything. His powerful voice, his flamboyant clothes, his incredible piano playing, it all hit George with the force of a revelation.
And the best new artist is me.
Imagine growing up in post-war England. Life was often gray, and music on the radio could be quite tame and predictable. Then, suddenly, you hear Little Richard screaming, "A wap boopaloo bop bam boom." It was like a message from another planet, a planet full of energy, fun, and freedom. This sound, this feeling, was what made George Harrison desperately want to grab a guitar and join a band. He often spoke about the sheer impact of hearing artists like Little Richard for the first time. It wasn't just about liking the music, it was a life-altering experience. It showed him what music could be, a powerful expression of pure joy and rebellion.
At that time, they were called black music, race music, when I sung rock and roll. I was on RCA Victor before Elvis Presley.
The raw power of songs like Tutti Frutti or Good Golly Miss Molly was undeniable. Little Richard didn't just sing, he shouted, he whooped, he pounded the piano keys with a ferocity that was captivating. This wasn't polite background music. This was music that demanded you listen, that made you want to jump and shout yourself.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. That was slipping and sliding.
The Beatles, in their early days before they conquered the world, openly showed their admiration for Little Richard. They regularly performed his songs in their live shows. Long Tall Sally, for example, was a staple of their act, delivered with as much raw energy as they could muster, a clear homage to one of their biggest heroes. Performing these songs was their way of connecting with that electrifying spirit. Even more amazing for George and the other young Beatles, they actually got to share the stage with Little Richard himself during their time playing grueling shows in Hamburg, Germany. Picture a young George Harrison still honing his guitar skills, watching this American rock and roll giant perform night after night. He would have absorbed every detail: Little Richard's incredible showmanship, his ability to command a stage, the way he connected with the audience, and the sheer, unadulterated joy he brought to his music. It was like attending a masterclass in rock and roll performance.
You have the old thunderbolt from the Middle West.
I understand there's been a little friction between who is going to be on the top of the bill, you or Chuck Berry.
Oh, I'm going to fix him.
Little Richard's music was a vital ingredient in the musical stew that nourished the young Beatles. It was more than just fast tempos and loud vocals. It was an attitude, a spirit of freedom and self-expression. This energy became a fundamental part of the Beatles' own sound, even as their music evolved and became more complex. For George, Little Richard's songs were like the alphabet of rock and roll. They provided the basic vocabulary and the passionate spirit that fueled his own musical journey. His influence was about the sheer liberating power of performance, the idea that music could be an ecstatic release. This early love for the untamed, high-octane thrill of pure rock and roll, as delivered by its wildest pioneer, never really left George. It was the initial, brilliant spark that set his musical world on fire. This raw, untamed energy was a crucial early inspiration, but George also found himself drawn to artists who could craft words with profound meaning. 2. Bob Dylan.
That didn't seem to be connected in any kind of way, and come up with a melody and a song.
While Little Richard represented the explosive physical energy of rock and roll that first ignited George Harrison's passion, Bob Dylan appealed to a different, more thoughtful side of him. Dylan was a master of words, a songwriter who could weave intricate stories and deep emotions into his music. For George, Dylan wasn't just another singer. He was a true poet, an artist whose lyrical genius and unwavering artistic honesty profoundly influenced his own approach to songwriting. The admiration George felt for Dylan was immense, leading to one of the most significant musical friendships of his life.
If not for you.
When the Beatles first started writing their own songs, their lyrics often focused on common themes like young love and romance. Then Bob Dylan emerged, writing songs that tackled social issues, personal struggles, and complex philosophical ideas, all delivered in a unique, often unconventional, poetic style. Dylan's work showed George and many other songwriters of that era that a song could be so much more than a catchy melody with simple words. It could be a vehicle for powerful storytelling, for social commentary, for expressing the deepest corners of the human experience. George listened intently to Dylan's albums, studying how he used language, how he constructed his narratives, and how he fearlessly sang about what mattered to him.
Then you'll ever know about me, ever. I mean, I could tell you, I'm not a folk singer and explain to you why, but you wouldn't really understand.
This deep respect for Dylan's artistry blossomed into a warm and lasting friendship. They were kindred spirits in many ways, two musicians who had experienced incredible fame but still sought authenticity and meaning in their work and their lives. They understood the pressures of the music world and shared a desire to create music that was true to themselves. This bond eventually led to a wonderful and almost mythical musical collaboration, the supergroup The Traveling Wilburys.
Sometimes you gotta be strong. Well, it's all right.
Just imagine the scene. George Harrison and his hero Bob Dylan, alongside other musical giants like Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and Roy Orbison, casually getting together to write songs, play music, and just enjoy each other's company. It was a project born out of friendship and mutual respect, free from the usual pressures of the music industry. For George, the experience of creating music so joyfully with Dylan, an artist he admired so deeply, must have been an incredible highlight of his career.
On the record. So they asked me for an extra song, and I didn't have one already recorded.
George Harrison often showed his admiration for Dylan by recording his songs. His version of Dylan's If Not For You, which appeared on George's All Things Must Pass album, is a beautiful example. George didn't just copy Dylan, he brought his own gentle touch to the song, making it uniquely his while still honoring the original. Beyond direct covers, Dylan's influence can be heard woven into the fabric of George's own songwriting, especially as he grew more confident in expressing his personal thoughts and spiritual ideas. Songs like Beware of Darkness, with its introspective lyrics, or I Me Mine, with its honest look at ego, show a depth and a willingness to tackle serious themes that surely owed a debt to Dylan's pioneering work. George learned from Dylan that it was not only acceptable, but important to write about what truly mattered to you, to use your music to explore your inner world.
On the new record, or originally? The first time it came about, I just made a record called Cloud 9.
For George, Bob Dylan was more than just a brilliant songwriter. He was a symbol of artistic integrity, In an industry that often valued commercial success above all else, Dylan always seemed to follow his own artistic compass, regardless of trends or expectations. George deeply respected this courage and commitment to his craft. Their friendship was a source of great joy and inspiration for George, a connection with a fellow traveler who understood the power and the responsibility of making music that aimed for something more than just entertainment. Dylan's mastery of words was deeply inspiring, but George's journey as a guitarist began with the electrifying sounds of early rockabilly pioneers. 3. Carl Perkins. Before George Harrison developed his own signature guitar style, known for its melodic beauty and tasteful understatement, he was a young lad in Liverpool, England, utterly captivated by the electrifying sounds of early American rock and roll and rockabilly. Among the guitarists whose records first grabbed his attention and set his fingers itching to play, Carl Perkins was a true legend. Perkins wasn't just playing notes, he was crafting a sound, a raw, energetic, and effortlessly cool guitar style that became a cornerstone of rockabilly. For the teenage George, listening to Carl Perkins was like discovering a secret language, and Perkins was one of his very first and most important guitar idols.
Stones and Cadillacs and big houses, and those dreams just flooded my little soul. And I'd tell my brothers and my little...
Carl Perkins's music, featuring classic tracks like Blue Suede Shoes, which he wrote and originally recorded, though Elvis Presley's version became more famous, Honey Don't, and Matchbox, was packed with catchy tunes. But for George, the real magic was in Perkins' guitar playing. It was deceptively simple, yet incredibly inventive. His guitar lines were clean, with a distinctive twang, and always perfectly in the pocket, driving the rhythm forward. They were the kind of licks that stuck in your head and made you want to pick up a guitar yourself. This sound resonated deeply with young George.
And when was the first time that you met Elvis Presley?
It was in 1954. Elvis was the first rockabilly.
He would have spent countless hours with his ear pressed to the speaker, trying to learn those Perkins riffs on his early, inexpensive guitars. This wasn't just casual listening, it was an intense study, absorbing the techniques and the feel that would become the bedrock of his own playing. The profound impact Carl Perkins had on George Harrison is perfectly illustrated by a heartfelt admission George reportedly made to Perkins's son. George told him, "If it hadn't have been for your daddy, I never would have picked up a guitar." This is an extraordinary tribute.
There wasn't a name for what we did. Pardon me, I just called it music with a beat.
It reveals that Perkins wasn't merely an influence. He was the catalyst, the very reason George embarked on his lifelong journey with the guitar. It underscores how much those early rockabilly records meant to him, igniting his passion and shaping his destiny. It was the sound of Perkins's guitar that planted the seed of ambition in George's young mind.
You shared your blessings with others. I'm one, and I know it's true.
The Beatles, as a collective, also paid homage to Carl Perkins and his influence. They recorded a version of his song, "Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby," for their album Beatles for Sale. And significantly, George himself sang the lead vocal on this track. It was a very public acknowledgement of his debt to one of his earliest heroes, a way of saying thank you to the man whose music had thrilled and inspired him so much. When the Beatles played Perkins' songs, they weren't just doing a cover, they were channeling that same vibrant, exciting energy that had captivated them as young listeners. They also covered Matchbox and Honey Don't, further cementing Perkins' place in their musical DNA.
The businessman of the bunch. He also was very creative. He knew how to put things together.
For George, Carl Perkins embodied the pure, unadulterated thrill of early rock and roll guitar. Perkins's style wasn't about showing off with complicated solos, it was about delivering punchy, memorable guitar lines that perfectly served the song, infused with an irresistible rhythm and feel. This approach, focusing on taste, timing, and the power of a great riff, deeply influenced George's own musical philosophy. From these foundational heroes, George also forged deep musical bonds with his contemporaries, artists who shared his journey through the landscape of rock. 4. Eric Clapton.
I think it must have been 67 when they were doing the White Album. And George, I'd got a house, I'd bought a sort of flat in King's Road.
In the world of rock music, where talent and egos often clashed, George Harrison found a kindred spirit and a profound musical connection with fellow guitarist Eric Clapton. Their relationship was famously layered and complex, involving deep friendship, shared musical explorations, and even intertwined personal lives. Clapton later married George's first wife, Pattie Boyd, who inspired Harrison's Something and Clapton's Layla.
Yeah, but I mean, it must have been something. It must have been something that you had, something that you did.
Well, it was, I mean, from my personal point of view, it was a great time in my life because I was in my early 20s.
Despite the twists and turns of their personal history, the mutual admiration they held for each other as musicians was a constant, undeniable force. For George, Eric Clapton was not just a close friend. He was a guitarist of breathtaking skill and deep soul, someone whose playing he held in the highest esteem.
Because I've made them, and so I'm living with that. I know that, you know, I make 5 times as many mistakes as I want to.
During the 1960s, Eric Clapton was already making a huge name for himself as a guitar phenomenon with bands like the Yardbirds and Cream. He was hailed as a guitar god, revered for his incredible fluency in blues rock and his ability to coax an extraordinary range of emotions from his instrument. George Harrison, himself a highly respected and innovative guitarist, recognized Clapton's exceptional talent from the start. He frequently spoke with admiration about Clapton's technical brilliance, his deep understanding of the blues tradition, and his almost supernatural ability to make his guitar sing, cry, and soar. This wasn't just casual praise, it was the profound respect of one master musician for another, acknowledging a shared dedication to their craft. The most iconic and celebrated example of their musical collaboration is, without a doubt, Clapton's stunning guitar solo on George's Beatles masterpiece, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. The story behind this collaboration is legendary. George had written the song and was passionate about it, but he felt that perhaps the other Beatles weren't giving it the attention it deserved, or maybe he sensed that his own playing style, while perfect for many songs, wasn't quite what this particular track needed to achieve its full emotional impact.
When I'm lying in my bed.
So, he did something almost unheard of in the Beatles. He invited an outside musician to play a lead part on one of their recordings. He asked his friend Eric Clapton. Clapton was reportedly a bit reluctant at first, saying something like, "Oh no, I can't do that. Nobody ever plays on Beatles records." But George insisted, and Clapton laid down a guitar solo that is now etched in rock history, a searing, lyrical, and heartbreakingly beautiful performance that elevates the song to another level. This moment perfectly captured their friendship and George's humility in recognizing that Clapton could bring something special to his creation. Their musical partnership extended far beyond that one famous solo. George Harrison and Eric Clapton played together on many occasions throughout their careers. They guested on each other's solo albums, shared the stage at historic events like the Concert for Bangladesh, which George organized in 1971, and simply enjoyed jamming together as friends. There was an intuitive understanding between them when they played, a musical conversation that flowed effortlessly. They could anticipate each other's phrasing, weave their guitar lines together seamlessly, and inspire each other to reach new creative peaks.
And said, "Come on, where's the guitar?" I mean, I love the band.
For George, Eric Clapton was more than just a technical wizard on the guitar. He admired the profound soulfulness and raw emotion that Clapton channeled into his playing. While George's own style was often characterized by its melodic grace, and carefully constructed solos. He deeply valued the bluesy intensity and improvisational fire that Clapton brought to his music. Beyond the realm of rock and blues guitar gods, George's musical appreciation extended to the polished harmonies and heartfelt expressions of soul music. Smokey Robinson.
I first heard You Really Got a Hold on Me by the Beatles because they sent us an album to Motown.
While George Harrison's musical roots were firmly planted in the raw excitement of early rock and roll, the twang of skiffle, and the intricate lines of rockabilly guitar, his appreciation for music was incredibly wide-ranging and continually evolving. He possessed a genuine and profound love for the smooth, sophisticated, and deeply soulful sounds that emanated from Detroit's Motown records in the 1960s and beyond.
Okay, 10 years old, and they're actually singing your song.
No, they didn't sing my song that day.
Who's Loving You?
No, they didn't sing that day.
Among the constellation of brilliant artists that graced the Motown label, George often specifically mentioned Smokey Robinson as a songwriter and singer whose work he deeply admired. This fondness for Motown revealed another important dimension of Harrison's musical taste, one that cherished melodic ingenuity, heartfelt vocal performances, and the art of impeccable songwriting.
Well, for my listening pleasure, I would pick Off the Wall.
Smokey Robinson, whether performing as a solo artist or leading his group, The Miracles, was a true master of his craft. He penned and performed a string of timeless hits like The Tracks of My Tears, Shop Around, You've Really Got a Hold on Me, a song the Beatles themselves covered early in their career, showcasing their own admiration for Motown, and Ooh Baby Baby. These songs were characterized by their elegant melodies, intelligent and often poignant lyrics, and Smokey's own distinctive, smooth, and incredibly expressive high tenor voice. For George Harrison, who was himself a gifted melodist and a songwriter who increasingly sought emotional depth in his work, the sheer artistry and emotional honesty of Smokey Robinson's music held a powerful attraction. He recognized the genius in songs that could be both commercially successful and artistically rich.
It's according to when you get it and what kind of, how potent it is.
In various interviews throughout his life, George consistently expressed his high regard for Motown artists. His appreciation wasn't limited to just Smokey. He admired the incredible talent pool that defined the Motown sound. Artists like Stevie Wonder, whom George specifically named as one of his absolute favorites, Marvin Gaye, The Temptations, Diana Ross and the Supremes, and Martha and the Vandellas created a body of work that was consistently excellent. Motown records were renowned for their polished production, their infectious rhythms, often provided by the legendary session band, the Funk Brothers, their brilliant vocal arrangements, and their ability to convey a wide range of emotions, from pure joy to deep heartbreak. George understood and appreciated the immense skill and creativity that went into making those records. He loved how a Motown song could make you want to dance, and at the same time, tell a story that resonated deeply.
I'm not a songwriter who needs to go to the mountains or to the desert for 2 months and isolate myself so that I can write. It just happens for me, man.
This love for Motown music demonstrates George Harrison's open-mindedness and his capacity to appreciate greatness in many different musical forms. He wasn't confined by genre labels. He understood that a great song was a great song, whether it was a raw rock and roll anthem or a sophisticated soul ballad. The melodic sophistication of Motown, with its often intricate chord progressions and lush harmonies, certainly appealed to George's own developing songwriting sensibilities. He knew how challenging it was to write a song that sounded effortless and catchy on the surface, but was actually built on a foundation of clever musical ideas and emotional sincerity. George Harrison's musical loves were rich and varied, reflecting his own journey from a rock and roll kid to a spiritual seeker and a master songwriter. The artists he admired fueled his passion and shaped his own timeless music. If you enjoyed this glimpse into George's world, please like this and subscribe for more.